Hello everyone, it's Mike Levin, Friday, January 29th, at around 8:50 a.m. Just getting off the subway, heading into the office. You can just about see it there. And yesterday's video that I did this way was surprisingly popular, so I thought that I'd do another, focusing on the topics that people expressed interest in. And I talked about how SEO was in transition and my 20-year or so long-term plans to stay relevant and I guess sort of create a legacy, make a ding in the universe, per Steve Jobs' way of discussing that idea. And transition is the key thought. You know, there's a lot of terms thrown out there like change and disruption, and the only thing you can rely on is, you know, change. So that's as true in my field as any, and my field of search engine optimization is tied into a whole ecosystem of, you know, sub-economies in the whole modern economy, which itself is undergoing great transition. And I guess anything special you can get a premium for, large margins, lots of profit. And then once it's been out there for a while, everyone looking at you figures out how it's done, copies you, and in many cases exceeds you. And then that special thing gets moved over into the category of commodity. And that never stops. So there is a lot of pressure on people who want to make money in that original route, the route of doing something first, to constantly be forever more creative, to up the ante, to raise the bar. And it's hard to do, of course. It takes gambles, it takes risks, the rewards are potentially much larger, but you see companies like Amazon do it, coming out of the gate doing it. You know, it took them a while, but basically they set a plan and they've been executing on that plan very successfully. And then there's Apple, who had a very different original mission, much more tied to computers than whole ecosystems of goods and services that could sort of be with you for your whole life, much more similar to, I guess, the GE and Westinghouses of yesteryear, who owns the TV networks to sort of knit together the entire lifestyle package that they sold to you through the commercials on the TV networks that they own to sell you the products and the hard goods that they built. So Amazon's doing a version of that, Apple's doing a version of that. And some would say Google, Microsoft is on a comeback. You know, you might throw Samsung in. You know, at one time they were called the three horsemen of the new economy. But the real point is that anything commoditized ends up being reduced in cost, less special, and what are mere mortals like ourselves who are just trying to, you know, carve out a living supposed to do. We can't compete with the massive economies of scale and means of production that these mega companies have. So that gets to the transition and the new economy and new currency. If specialness and uniqueness is so valuable, then the ability of a person to bring that specialness and uniqueness to an audience, find the audience, define and package a product, bring that product to the audience, and then have some business model or scheme for turning that into other forms of currency, such as subscription, you know, just buying apps in an app store, supporting people in various means. Kickstarter ties in, microcurrency payments, agreeing to look at advertisements in exchange for premium content. There's all sorts of models, but creativity and a few other elements come into play that becomes the kind of currency that individuals can produce out of almost nothingness and submit into the larger marketplaces that other companies provide, so that people with wares can find people who need those wares. And in SEO, I keep coming back to these same things that makes a page unique and worth serving in search, which are the exact same things that an individual needs to turn their personal product into something marketable in the new economy. And that is, of course, uniqueness. You can't be peddling the exact same thing as everybody else. Then quality, because it's got to be good. It can't just be different from everybody else, but it's actually got to have that extra bit put in that differentiates it, makes it look good, pulls in from different sources, curates not only your own incredible contributions, but other related things to you, so that people visiting your page have a broader view. This is why aggregate review ratings are being tied into product pages all the time, and category pages, and lots of photography and visuals and images. So quality is quite important. And then there's a third thing, which is mass appeal, right? It's very easy for people to get wrapped up into hyper intellectual, academic, excessively abstract pastimes, activities that they and maybe 10 other people are intensely interested in, and nobody else cares. You know, if you want to make a life and a living out of it, unless you want to be in academia or be supported by some sort of patron who sees your wonderful insight, you got to give that up and broaden your scope a little bit to things that people in general, at least maybe a few 100,000 people, would be interested in, because you're going to have to extract a certain amount, or let's say not extract, that's the cynical way of looking at it. You're going to have to exchange your currency, your creativity, uniqueness, and appeal for other forms of currency, of course, money. Bitcoin was an interesting experiment. It had a few of these components, but of course, it doesn't have that long-term sustainability. It is burning out faster than a person's typical career would, run in any given field. So, I guess that leads to, there are take the money and run strategies. Once you find a trick that works, get as much out of it and move on to the next thing. And that would be the black hat SEO world that I mentioned yesterday, but I of course avoided that. And in avoiding that, I had to take up something else that could replace the short-term wins, which, could be nice, with more of a long-term, good for the rest of my life and my career, approach, which turned out to be learning Python. The Python language itself has that long-term sustainability. It's the language of choice for new learners. It's being taken up by schools everywhere as the first, language to introduce people to for programming, computer science, and then also the platform to run it on, which is always a little bit of a challenge, because where do you run your code? Where could you run your code that could last for your entire life? And the answer always comes down to some sort of virtual machine. And there's only one out there, which is in the free and open source world, that runs on every other major desktop platform, and that's QEMU. And you don't need all this graphic stuff. All the graphic stuff about Linux has an expiration date set on it. GNOME, KDE, Unity from Ubuntu. All of these things are very tied to today's desktop world, and they're not going to be around forever, except as, curiosities that you pull up on virtual machines. However, the underlying text-based server technologies, the way you boot a machine, the way you get all your services running in the first place, the joke is that in some future world, they'll take apart the intelligent robots that are, running the earth, and you're going to find the Unix or Linux boot kernel down there somewhere underneath. It's that fundamental, not going away. So I've invested fairly heavily in the whole concept of a code execution platform for Unixy, Linuxy type applications that works sort of like a Noah's Ark for code, and that is Levinix. And then the Python project based on Levinix is Pipulate, and together it creates an environment where you can mash up and process data from any data source in an environment that's extremely human consumable. Like, you can use it for everyday tasks, especially in my field of SEO and social media, but for more and more things. And it's positioned to grow. It's positioned to grow with me over the next 20 years as I grow and my abilities improve, and the ability to can a virtual machine in a Noah's Ark style forever improves. And that's pretty much it. My currency is the ability to teach people Python and to make their code runnable for life, and to increase their personal capabilities in a way that's very compatible with the direction the new economy is going. Because once you have your uniqueness, you're going to have to work on your quality and mass appeal, and that usually means some sort of what we would call today web presence, app, website, whatever. And I'm going to help people pursue all their respective dreams and turn all that complicated stuff that's very difficult today into commodity learnings. Well, anyway, thanks for joining me. Thanks for listening to me ramble again. I'll try and keep these things to 10 minutes or so. Let me know how you like them. Don't forget to subscribe. Hope to see you again soon.